So I suggest that the task for the university and arts community is to understand and interrogate how spirituality, within, between, and beyond the boundaries of particular belief systems and emergent belief systems, informs the way we think and learn, how we create and innovate, how we experiment and interrogate, how we govern and rule. Particularly in a world where the negotiation of multi-religiosity, multiculturality are ever present, we need to contend with the reality that spirituality is not just integral to being human. It should not be something that is primarily informed by religious institutions or state authorities. There needs to be far more open and critical space for dialogue and debate, without fear or favor. Manuel Castells makes an important distinction, of course, between religion and fundamentalism, the former being a source of solace and refuge, and the latter a useful source of identity construction in the network society, particularly for those who feel left out or in opposition to dominant values such as capitalism. And while it's important to look at these patterns historically, sociologically, politically, and economically, we perhaps need to look at these behaviors and proclivities through the lens of spirituality. By this I mean looking at life via the frame of spiritual existence and engagement. And if we think our vocabularies for ethics are impoverished, then we're worse off when it comes to spirituality. The terms and languages often seem abstract, inaccessible, disempowering, rather than providing agency. So how would it change if the university and the arts community were to work more closely together on these areas? What new insights, frameworks, aesthetics, theories, artistic practices would emerge through these collaborations? How would this counter the bias in favor of the sciences and economics that still prevails? And what contributions could be made to the communities and societies we live in if these projects and philosophies were to take off? There are more efforts towards understanding spirituality and medicine, for example. But do we begin to link spirituality and economics? Spirituality and biopolitics? What are the ethics of the spirit? In one sense, it would seem obvious that these are directions we should be looking towards, because in order to understand what it means to be human, we have to sort out how to live together and how to do it peacefully. Simple and straightforward, complex and contradictory. And yes, it is significant that I'm a Malaysian, because perhaps these things are more urgent in Malaysia than ever before. If we are multicultural, then we are also multilogical, multipolitical, and multi-ideological. Can we not be multi-ethical and multi-spiritual, twisting and turning as we go? These turns, I think, are not unlike the, quote, ruses, displacements, and ellipses, end of quote, in Michel de Certeau's The Practice of Everyday Life, that question the proper meanings handed down to us and perpetuated in favor of a dominant ideology. And these turns become what he calls the tactics of the weak, to subvert and redirect energies towards alternatives that are less unilogical. To that end, the arts community and the university have a tough time ahead in terms of remaining relevant and resonant to the everyday. We need to ask if our central question of what it means to be human needs to be enlarged individually and together, and if we would benefit from working together more concertedly towards this end. And if so, then how so? Obviously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlene. That was most enlightening. Very, very elegant talk. Can I now invite the people from the roundtable to come up and join us here?
Before we go to the roundtable, though, do we have any questions? No questions? Yeah, okay.
Hi, Charlene. How are you? Thanks for the talk. Just wanted to problematize the idea of the arts community. And you mentioned that the arts community is not without its structures, without institutions. And I think we may have to rethink that. I think the arts community itself has its structures, has its institutions, is not closed off to a kind of the dangers that we were talking about that also rules the university. And in that sense, the idea of corporate funding and stuff like that, getting money from the powers that be. And so I think should we, in fact, look at the idea of the arts community, or should we consider the arts as just the arts? And in that sense, I just want to also link it to the possibility that perhaps the arts community may be defining things that it may not want to do. I mean, it's an unpopular thing that I'm saying here, maybe, but in trying to be open, is the community related to the arts being closed? Basically, it's just an assumption that we can discuss.
I should clarify that when I was talking about the arts community not being an institution when comparing it to the university, I didn't mean that there are no institutions in the art community. Definitely, there are lots of institutions and structures. But as a community, it is not an institution, unlike the university. And having said that, I think there's a difference between the arts community and the arts industry. And the arts industry operates quite differently. And here the choice was made to name it the arts community, which has a very different kind of feel, association, presence. If you talk about the university and the arts industry, I think it'd be quite a different discussion. And yes, the arts community is susceptible, as any other group of people, if they are a group of people, to the forces that manipulate, dominate, that conflict and contradict with aspiration, passion, ideals, etc., etc., etc. And yeah, I think all the time, the more we problematize what we assume and take for granted, the healthier our capacity to intervene would be. But thanks for bringing that up so that I can clarify.
Another question or comment?
Hello, goodness. Hello, I'm here.
Paul, you sound like you came from the heavens.
Which is appropriate. Yeah, this is a real voice of God's kind of microphone. I'm going to keep it.
Keep it, please. So easy to talk to God then.
I have a question for you. Actually, I just want to... It's really
I can't use this one.
They might be recording it, Paul. They might want you to use it.
I'll speak loudly.
Hello, is this normal? Oh yes. Back to Earth. Hey, actually it's related to the spiritual strand in your talk. You know, historically centers of religion have been centers of learning. The transmission of ideas has been tightly bound in with spiritual practices and inquiry. So I just wonder, on the one hand, if there's value in placing your argument about the present day in a kind of historical context, or secondly, if you are suggesting that today something has happened, there's been some kind of rupture where previously there was greater continuity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just kind of mentioned it fleetingly that the university was closely tied, and even the arts community was closely tied to articulations and practices and expressions of religiosity and spirituality. And I think there were possibly a range of ruptures. I can't say I've done a lot of study into this, I'm not the expert on it. A range of ruptures, and the most convenient one is this idea of modernity and secularism and, you know, the separation of the church and state, or the religious institution and state. But I think what has happened is that perhaps we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. So in Singapore, to my knowledge, there are no theology departments in the university, although a theology department is not meant to be just one religion. But you go to Bible school or you go to religious school outside the university if you want to train. And I think that's a loss in some senses, although I don't want the university, so I think it's a good thing that it's veered away from representing one religion or one particular belief system. But my question is, how has it diluted the discourse? And how has it then kept it a kind of isolated zone, particularly multicultural, multi-religious locations, where the discussion is actually very crucial. And so we talk about ecumenism of a certain sort, or multi-faith leaders coming together, but in that dialogue, rarely do you find the university and the arts community intertwined in developing ways that people who don't particularly belong to any one religion, or feel that they do but don't necessarily agree, or they agree but they want alternatives, can then find platforms for emergent alternatives. And if the university and arts community are sites where alternatives are allowed to occur more freely, because the people there spend a lot of time doing that, coming up with the new and the different, then how do we re-include it? You know, so it's the reassembling, really, such that it's not just the domain of the state and the religious authority. I think that's my concern. How to do it, I don't know. And you know, I think it happens in certain sites, but less so here, unfortunately. Thanks, God.
Any last questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Charlene. And let's have a round table. So Charlene, who teaches history at NUS, is our moderator. And then on the far right is Christina Chua, who works at Ota Fine Arts and studying English at NUS. Wei Fen, who does a variety of things as well, including a little bit of editing of literary stuff, and is doing her MA at NUS in South Asian Studies. Wong Yiping, or Ping, is studying at SMU, studying law, also very involved in theater. So I'll just hand over to you guys. Thank you.